Hi, I'm Becky Sims and welcome to Behind the Future, the podcast from Aspiration Digital. We're here to unlock digital careers, one conversation at a time. On each episode, I'll be joined by a student co-host. We'll be interviewing amazing people from across the industry to learn about how they got started in their career and what it is that they do. Let's dive in to find out the secrets to their success. That was another good episode, wasn't it, Ruhan?
Yeah.
Petra was just so interesting. And to be working in responsible AI at the BBC, I mean, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was most impactful for you?
Oh, well, there was a lot of things. I mean, she spoke about things about AI that I didn't even know, and maybe the audience don't know either. And also, she spoke about like working the BBC and how it's an exciting job and things like that. And also the fact that even now she's still looking for the next step, and she still like doesn't know what to do and stuff like that. And I feel like that's really interesting and inspiring for someone like my age as well.
Yeah, you don't have to know it all.
Yeah.
So I guess let's let everyone hear the story. So enjoy Petra's episode.
Hi, I'm Petra, and I'm taking you behind the future.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Future. My fantastic co-host today is the wonderful Ruhan. Ruhan, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Ruhan, and I'm a student currently studying politics, media, and sociology.
Fantastic. Well, welcome on board for this episode. And then we have Petra joining us. Petra, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Petra. I work at the BBC. I'm Principal Responsible AI Manager there. And so that sort of kind of means I'm working with teams at the BBC, making sure that our use of AI sort of aligns with our values.
Fantastic. Oh, there's going to be a lot to unpick there, isn't there? Over to Ruhan for your first question.
So walk us through a day in the life as an AI manager at the BBC.
That's a tough one. I think the thing about that is no 2 days are the same. I would say a lot of my role involves kind of talking, and a bit more talking to teams, talking to other sort of people working in the AI space, talking to legal, talking to data protection, like figuring out, understanding what people want to do with AI and giving advice, thinking through some of their uses and figuring out what the BBC's position should be. Also, presentations, speaking to teams, explaining what responsible AI is, what the expectations of them are, and then running workshops. I mean, it's pretty much, a lot of it's firefighting. You know, people coming and going, I want to use AI to do this. I don't know about this. Help me with this. So a lot of it is, there's no, we have plans, but a lot of the times they just get flung in the air, and, the day that you planned, the week that you planned ends up never actually being what happened, because you're working in a live media environment, and somebody might have something that wants to, there's a use case that needs to go, something they want to do with AI that's going to air in 2 days or something like that. So you're constantly sort of figuring out, reacting. And also I think things change, priorities change. Something that we said 2 weeks ago, our position was this. The legislation has changed, the tool has changed, audience expectations have changed. So we're constantly sort of having to review, reassess and react.
What would you say inspired you to focus on responsible AI?
I would say I've always kind of been interested in sort of social justice and kind of fairness, inclusivity, all of those kind of things. And sort of they've always sort of followed me out through my career. But I think about 7 years ago, I did a fellowship, Core Leadership Fellowship, and it was basically, I was sponsored by the BBC, and you basically get a year out of work to explore leadership. Like it's for leaders in the arts, and you get to explore an aspect of leadership that you're interested in. And I couldn't figure out what that was for me for quite a while, and then I realized that actually I'm really interested in kind of what does inclusivity and fairness look like in a sort of digital society. And then I found out all about things like algorithmic bias, where, basically if things like, depending on where you live, you might get unfair credit scores, or depending on the color of your skin, facial recognition might sort of flag you as sort of undesirable, all of these kind of things, and that was just that was eye-opening, and I was kind of outraged and was like, this is what I want to do, this is important. And that was about 7 years ago, and I basically that's always been in the back of my head. So I've always kind of been, I didn't get into it after that year because I sort of tried, but it didn't sort of work out. But I sort of made sure that I was still sort of prepared, that I was reading up on the area, I was keeping track. And then when opportunity opened up in the BBC, I sort of jumped at it.
Love that. How do you find, because obviously you're wrestling a moving beast, aren't you? Because AI, what tool we have today is different to what we had a month ago, and it's different to what we'll have in 1 month, 2 months. That must mean that you're constantly on your toes.
It's really hard. I've just been in meetings yesterday about some of those things. Like you create guidance and you create guidelines and you say, this is what we're doing with this tool and this is how this tool works. And then suddenly it's all changed. And it's like suddenly there's all this functionality that just suddenly came up and then we need to think about our position again. So I think with all of this, it's flexibility is so important, and also kind of resilience, being able to kind of be like, okay, that's just hard, because it is hard. And I think with this space as well, we just don't know. Like a lot of what we're doing is we're figuring it out. It's all new. So there's no right or wrong answer, really. It's all just trying to figure out what is how can we sort of reduce the risk of what we're doing, but also how can we sort of maximize the benefits and get people wanting to use it? How can it work best for people? But yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because you want to reduce risk, but also enable people. And those two things are kind of butting against each other a little bit, aren't they? And I guess there must be some core principles to help the teams know when to ask questions, when to pause in a process and go, actually, is this the right thing to be doing? Yeah,
we've done quite a lot of work with that. We've created our sort of BBC AI principles. So we've sort of got 9 principles that kind of like are the kind of heart of what we do. Things like transparency, things like respecting rights, things like fairness, things like human creativity, human oversight. So those are really important. It's a bit like our BBC editorial guidelines, like impartiality, trust and everything. We spent 100 years at the BBC working out how to make sure that when sort of we create content that it sort of aligns with our values. And now these AI principles are like when we use AI that it aligns with our values.
Love that. That.
I think, Becky said before that a month ago AI was different and it might be different again in like 1 or 2 months' time. What excites you the most about the future of AI?
I would say, I suppose so that's a tough one. I'm trying to think about this. I mean, I love technology. I love innovation. I love seeing how things can be made better. But I guess the thing is, what does better mean? Better for somebody doesn't necessarily mean it's better for other people. But yeah, I like to push boundaries. I don't know where it can go, but there's so many ways that AI has already helped and continues to help, like in medical care, in healthcare, in like so many different industries, and sort of even though it's got like lots of implications with energy use, it can also help in like the climate sort of situation. It can sort of help sort of address sort of climate change and things like that. So I think there is so much possibility with AI, and I think that's really exciting. I also think AI is potentially asking us to look at sort of societal needs in a way that we haven't really done before, because AI is potentially making us look at what does work look like? What is the future of work? What is a 5-day week and all this kind of stuff? If things, AI might potentially change jobs. It can potentially, reduce some jobs, but create new jobs. And then it's asking us to sort of look at what society do we want to be and how do we explore that?
Love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you spoke about before how you make sure that it aligns with BBC's values. So how do you ensure that?
That's tough. Not easy. So I think it's really a culture change, because I think the thing is, until recently, people have been using, the thing is, AI isn't new. It's been around since like the 1950s, in different forms and stuff. The thing that kicked it all off is generative AI. That's like with like ChatGPT and all of those sort of AI models. That's when suddenly AI became something that everyone was talking about rather than just really engineers or data scientists. And so what we're trying to do now is sort of create like a whole new culture of if you're using AI, think about what that means and think about the processes and all of that kind of stuff and the implications of your use. And so we've created, or like in the BBC, we've got a responsible AI policy, we've got frameworks, we've got guidance, we've got guidelines, we've got like a whole process that if you're going to be using AI, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. We've created training modules. So like, that it's like this, there's mandatory training that everyone at the BBC has to do in AI to sort of understand some of the key things. And then depending on what you want to do, there's additional training. So there's quite a lot go through that to try and sort of get people to understand, to get people to follow the process. But again, it takes time. It's tough because there's a lot happening at the BBC. And this is sort of one other thing that people now sometimes need to think about.
And it's gone into the hands of everybody, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Like literally anyone listening at home, you can just go and load up ChatGPT and give it a go, or use any of the tools out there. So it's also trying to then create that enough friction there that people think, oh, hold on, actually, I need to be responsible about what I'm doing here.
I think it's also, the thing is, it's a really good point, because ChatGPT is something that people need to sort of go and use. Whereas the thing about a lot of these tools, these functionalities now, they're being embedded into devices. I don't know, do either of you have like an Apple phone,
Yes.
iPhone?
Yeah.
So Apple Intelligence, which is the generative AI capabilities, has now been rolled into iOS 18.
Yeah.
So it is embedded. So you might not know it, but it is in your phone and it's embedded into it. So people don't realize that, the thing about generative AI is it's not accurate.
Yeah.
It's not accurate. So you could be asking your phone to do something, that a few months ago you'd be getting accurate answers for whereas now it's probability as to what you get.
Yeah, it is interesting that I was playing with it yesterday, and we were one of my colleagues wanted to mock up a piece of artwork into a bus stop. And I was like, and normally we get a designer to do that. I was like, surely AI can do that for us. So I went on and did it, and it just mocked up its own version. I said, no, I want you to use this version and put it in this bus stop. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then it just didn't do it. And I was like, you haven't done it. And it was like, oh yeah, I can't actually do that. And you're like, okay. Yeah. So it's quite frustrating sometimes as well. You actually have to have that kind of hard conversation with it of just tell me what you can actually do.
And it's so weird that basically we're now in a society where we're asking people to use tools, and we're getting people, and everyone's using tools that we know don't work. I mean, just think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
If you think about it, let's all go and use these things, and they may or may not be accurate. They may or not work. That's just bizarre, which is why it's so important, like critical thinking. That's like the key thing about all of this, that you really need to think about what you see everywhere. You've got things like disinformation, you've got sort of deepfakes, you've got all of this kind of stuff. You're getting to a point now where it's kind of hard to trust what is real and what isn't. And you can't even tell. I mean, I've been to I went to this conference, and it was all sort of AI experts, whatever an AI expert is, in the room and stuff. And we were all asked to look at videos and look at images and stuff, and shoot and decide which is real and which is not. Nobody can hand on heart, 100% guess it, get it right every time. The technology is so good now that it's really hard. I mean, lots of people go, oh, it's in the eyes, it's something, but that's all in hindsight. They wouldn't bet their houses on that. So it's kind of, what is real and what isn't. And then I was at another conference last week, and one of the people that was running the conference was basically told this story, which was fairly alarming, that she got a voicemail from her mother. Called her at the weekend and basically said, I've just got a voicemail from you. Are you okay? Are you okay? And the voicemail was not from her.
Wow.
So basically 3 seconds, AI can, if it gets your voice for 3 seconds, so if you put like a social media video or all that kind of stuff, all it needs is 3 seconds to be able to clone your voice. So it's just, yeah. And I think her sort of thing was, if you get passwords with your family, like agree a password.
Yeah.
So that they know it's you.
Yeah.
Because you just think of all the scary things that could
Yeah.
happen with that.
Well, and it's scary also, I think, thinking about where you work at the BBC, such a trusted media outlet, but actually the thought that it's so easy to be fooled now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's how do you make sure that things are put in the right way to make sure that your teams across the BBC are doing the right thing and knowingly feeling confident that they're doing the right thing? Because, yeah, it's so easy to be fooled by something.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I mean, and even it's easy for people to be fooled thinking that it is the BBC. I think, what was
Yeah.
it? Like, was it last year or something? There was like I was out on YouTube or something, like Fiona Bruce. There was like
Yeah.
there was a video of her, and she was I can't remember what she was doing, but she was something about insurance or something, and it looked like her and all that kind of stuff, and that was completely like
Yeah.
deep fake. It was completely generated.
Yeah.
And then,
And it's scary for the future of the media from
Yeah.
like whether it's BBC, whoever it is, from when we think about politics and the things that we trust, the things that are helping us make decisions. And if we're just seeing the wrong information, but we believe it to be true, it's yeah, I don't quite know where things are going on that.
well, you've got there's various initiatives that are happening. I mean, BBC have got like BBC Verify,
Yes.
which basically, you know, they sort of look at all of sort of articles and content and things like that, and you know, verify, and they've got labeling, so if people see it, they know that BBC Verify have checked it, and they're working with other organisations. And then you've also got C2PA, which is basically a standard with looking at sort of labeling, sort of it looks at where content was created, and it kind of looks through that whole sort of life cycle. So, and a lot of social media companies like Meta, so Instagram, Facebook, all of those are sort of signed up to it. So, for example, if they sort of can see that something has been sort of AI generated or something, they can label it. Like, so if you go into Instagram, you might see stuff that says AI generated, and that's like they're sort of automatically detecting that and labeling it.
That's good, isn't
And
it?
stuff like that. Though I think but it also depends on people from initially to sign up to things like C2PA and to update to do it within those standards. So I guess it's all of this. It's all early doors, and you know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think there's going to be so many stories over the next few years, maybe the next 10 years, that are just going to help shape the future of how we do things, because we can't predict how some of it's going to happen.
No.
Yeah, I agree. What would you say is, if you could change one bit of AI, what would you change about it?
The thing about AI is the data that powers AI is kind of built on the history of humans. It's our data, which is full of biases, which is full of, you know, discrimination, which is full of, you know, war, all these kind of things, full of happiness, all this sort of stuff. It's also full of nonsense, stuff that's wrong, lies, all this kind of things. And I guess, but also, if you think about it, a third of the world's population isn't online. So the data that is being used is kind of, it's from a subset of people that happen to be. So if I could change something, it would basically be to go back and sort of look at data and make the data that we use sort of representative of the world. And also figure out ways to capture things like, you know, you've got lots of sort of I don't know, tribes and things that basically they don't write anything down. It's all kind of local history. It's all passed down through the elders. It's spoken. It's never captured in a sort of formal sense. And those things will be lost the more that we rely on online data. So it's a way to basically capture the actual history of the world, not just the history written by the winners and the people that managed to go online. And so so then when we use AI, it's really thinking about everyone, and it isn't just excluding like a third of the population.
For all the latest marketing and brand news, follow the Drum Mag on Instagram.
So how do you think, so you said a third of the population isn't online. So how would you say they can be aware of the impact of AI?
Well, that's another hard thing as well, because the impacts, some of them, the impacts aren't necessarily obvious for them, like on a day-to-day basis, but there are impacts because, things like energy use and stuff, like data centers might be built in countries, and they might be using water from them for their countries, or it basically they could have, I don't know, any sort of medical aid they might get could be based on what AI has said they needed or not. So it's all of these kind of things. And I think on a day-to-day, I think one of these things I always sort of think about as well is also that whole thing about third world problems. First world problems, not third world problems, first world problems, in that how much some of them may want to know, but also for a lot of them, in a lot of countries and stuff, they don't care about AI. They're just trying to basically live day to day. And it's like, this is a longer term problem. And yeah, but I think across different countries, there's lots of grassroots projects, and also some governments are sort of doing more work in this space to kind of figure out how they can sort of get involved with AI and also make sure that AI works for them, not for the sort of large conglomerates. So, for example, I think in Nigeria, they're looking at creating their own sort of AI models themselves that work for people in Nigeria, rather than using AI models that were created in the States that basically don't work for them. Their data isn't built on what the Nigerian population care about or do.
So important, the quality of the data that goes in. And actually, I think some of the good advances I've seen that's affecting our work is when you're in like a walled situation and it's just the data that you want to use, and being able to use AI to help you understand that data set rather than it being exposed to absolutely everything, and getting the mishmash of data that, as you say, we've built up over all these years. Yeah,
no, definitely. But it also just made me think of the thing that you just said, what would I like to see change? I would also say that in the West, in the UK, Australia, America and stuff like that, when you look at things like AI anxiety, it's quite high in those countries. And whereas if you look in, say, like East Asia, China, Japan, South Korea and stuff, the anxiety is lower. And I mean, rightly or wrongly, but I think one thing that they do that we don't do is that I think the media has got a big part to play in that, because I don't know how many times, any time I'll see an article, like every sort of 2 out of every 10 articles I'll see will talk about Skynet. It will talk about robots. It will talk about the end of the world, all that kind of stuff. It's like this, Terminator view of AI. You go to any conference and people have slides on AI and they all have robots. It's basically AI. It's not the robots coming to get us. AI is a tool that humans use. So anything that AI does, it's because humans decided to do it. And humans decided to make it autonomous, or humans decided to use it in this way. So it's kind of, I feel like the media, there's quite a lot of scaremongering going on. I mean, yes, there are risks. There's risks, but we rarely look at the positives of AI in ways that other countries do. And so I think that has a quite a large part to play.
So how did you get into the BBC in the first instance?
I started off in publishing, actually. So I was working in publishing in sort of medical publishing, and then I saw a role at the BBC, and it was to run the publishing for the orchestras and choirs and the proms. And I've always liked the proms, and I've always been interested in working at the BBC, and I love publishing. So I was just like, wow, this is like a perfect job. And so I got into it with that. And I think I've been there for like 9 years now. And I think the great thing about the BBC is I've been there for 9 years, but I'm done 6 jobs, 6 different roles, completely different. And I think that's a really good thing about it. You can move around quite a lot. And so, and I think one thing as well with, you speak to people that are working in kind of this whole responsible AI world, and everyone has got a completely different sort of path in. And
Opening up opportunity for a lot of people. How big's the team that you're working in at the moment?
We're now 9. Yeah, the team sort of we started as 3 about 2 years ago, and now we're sort of growing.
Yeah, and I imagine we'll continue to grow.
Yeah.
What would you say to a young person like Ruhan that's thinking of getting into the world of work with AI being such a big thing? Because I think we felt it on the day at Aspiration Digital. There's a lot of young people, to the anxiety point, that are thinking there's going to be no jobs left by the time I'm ready to get a job. What are your views on that? What are you seeing?
The thing is, I don't think it's going to be there's no jobs. I think since the last 200 years of the Industrial Revolution, I feel like we've always had this thing where new things come in, like, with factories, that replaced a lot of people's jobs, but then it created a whole lot of new jobs. I think I saw a stat last week, something that basically said 60% of jobs that were in the 1940s no longer exist today. So this has always happened. And I think the thing about AI isn't necessarily that, yes, there'll be some jobs that get replaced by AI, but there'll be jobs that get created. I think the thing about AI is that it's an assistant. It can sort of help you, so a lot of things, it might even just, like with the BBC as well, I think what we always look at is how can AI sort of do things like, free up time so you can spend more time on complex problem solving and creative things, and, the repetitive stuff, the automated stuff that can sort of, AI could look at doing that. But think about it. Social media, all the social media jobs, they didn't exist 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them existed.
There's been huge transformation. I suppose it's probably also partly because of social media and how much media we consume now, that people start to get worried about these things and they talk about them more, and then it amplifies it more, and then
totally.
It just kind of just keeps on going, doesn't it? Whereas probably when the factories were coming, there wasn't as much media for people to spread that word, and you kind of just watched it happening. Now we're kind of talking about it happening more. So,
but I also think educate yourself. I think AI literacy is so key. I think just understanding some of, like, just educate yourself, understand what AI is, what it isn't, what it can do, and sort of do a few sort of courses. There are so many courses on things like LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, all these sort of things that are basically, Google, Microsoft, they all run free courses trying to let people know what AI is, what it isn't, and what the possibilities are. And I think that's the thing. It's basically, I think the more that you understand something, the less fear you have of it. And I think the people, keep an open mind, because the thing is, it's like when we talk about AI jobs, is that even going to be a thing in 10 years or 15 years? Or is every job going to be have some element of AI in it? It's like with when word processing came in with Microsoft Office, people had to go and do training courses on Microsoft Office, but now it's just everyone has to use it, know how to use those sort of word processing tools. And
it will just become the norm.
Yeah, I think it's important what you said about AI literacy. Like, people should educate themselves about it. And speaking of that, what would you say is the biggest misconception of AI that you wish people understood?
That it's everywhere. That I think people think that, I feel like a lot of times, I'm not sure how big this is, but I definitely say in my work, I think a lot of times people will go, I don't use AI, so it's not relevant to me. And it's like, well, you can't get away from AI. You are using it. You just don't realize you're using it. It's everywhere. Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's like people think they can put their heads in the sand on this, but that's fine if you want to put your head in the sand, but really just do a bit of understanding as to what that means. What the implications of AI being everywhere in your life mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. You spoke about before how you said, was it 9 years you said you're in the BBC? What would you say was the biggest, like, obstacle during those 9 years? Because going through 6 roles must be, like, quite hard.
Well, I like changing roles. That's the thing. So it wasn't that, So I was like, I think I'm curious. Curiosity is like the thing that drives me. I'm always like, I'm keen to learn and develop and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, now what's next? Because I've mastered that and I now want another challenge. So I would say, what was the biggest challenge? And I would say, Yeah, I guess it was when I basically came back from my fellowship that year that I did out looking at sort of leadership. And then I basically realized my role that I was doing in the proms, that I'd kind of outgrown it. And it was kind of like, what's next? And I really wanted to get into sort of responsible AI and things, but there wasn't really any sort of opportunities at the BBC. And then I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. That was like, I don't know what to do next, because I really want to do this. I'm really passionate about this, but I like the BBC, but I think I've outgrown my role. And I think that was really challenging. Like, what do I do? Do I leave? Do I course correct? Because the thing is as well, I was just like, I really love publishing, but there was no other publishing part of the BBC. So if I wanted to continue in publishing, I would have to leave the BBC. So it was kind of, that was like, I just really didn't know what to do.
And where did you go on to next? What was the next role?
Well, actually, what ended up happening was a role came up working for the director of radio and education, and he needed a sort of a business partner, somebody to sort of help his chief of staff, to work with him to help, sort of do that kind of chief of staffy support type role. And I basically was just like, I looked at it. My manager sort of came to me with it and said, "Are you interested?" And I was just like, no. I mean, I've never even thought of myself in those type of roles, because I was like, chief of staff, that's West Wing, that's, all that kind of stuff, that's not me. And then I was just like, no, also I don't want to be support for somebody else, work to somebody else. But then I looked at the job description, and I think I'd spent that whole year in that whole like fellowship year looking at leadership and like thinking about stretching yourself and challenging yourself and doing something that you didn't think that you could do. Because I also had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I was just like, oh, that's too much pressure for me to do that kind of job. But I sort of looked at the job description, I looked at all the sort of skills, and I was like, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And so I did the interview, I got the role, and then I just thought, look, I'm not sure, but I need to challenge myself, because I need something. And then I did that, and it was really good. I learned a lot, and I basically took me out of my comfort zone a lot. And so that was definitely eye-opening. And I ended up doing sort of similar roles in the BBC in different areas for the next few years. And then that was definitely eye-opening. It really taught me a lot about how the BBC runs, and how the BBC makes decisions. And it really expanded my network and also raised my profile. So, yeah.
I wonder if you'd have been able to get to where you are now without doing that, because it sounds like probably your understanding of the BBC is so important to your role right now.
That's why I got this job.
Yeah.
And that's also how I found out about this job, because, in a similar role, I basically went to the director of product, because I got her to come and speak when I was doing a job, to the senior leaders in my department, and I'd met her through these type of roles, and then I asked her to come and speak, and then afterwards I said, can I just have a chat about my job, because I think I want to get back into technology. And I told her about the work I'd done that year and everything like that, and she goes, well, let me introduce you to someone, because we're about to build a team. So,
what a time.
Without that, it would never have happened.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known about it, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think
everything happens for a reason,
totally.
Doesn't it?
I completely think that.
And you do have to push yourself through sometimes things that you don't really love or you're not quite sure about, but do you know what, I'm growing through this.
Yeah.
So, I love that. What if we went further back? Did you go to university after school, or what did you do?
Yeah, I went to university. My university was it's an interesting experience. I went to Imperial I got in to do aeronautical engineering, because I was obsessed. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and then I wanted to build planes. And then basically after I got in, I thought, over the summer holidays, I was like, I'm not sure about aeronautical engineering. Maybe I'm putting myself down one path. So I changed to do physics. And so then I did a year at Imperial of physics, and I loathed Imperial. I hated it, couldn't bear it. And I left. And then I sort of needed to find something else, although my mother would kill me. So I didn't tell her I'd left. And then I ended up, I went to Manchester, and I did computer science and French. So that's what I ended up doing. Imperial was great. I really enjoyed the work I think Imperial, it's a great university, but it wasn't for me, because I think what it really showed me was that I it was so science. Everyone was science. Everyone talked about science. They were all that. It was a type of person, and I was like, I realized I was just like, I need arts. I need arts and science. You know, I'm a hybrid. I need people, and I was like, these aren't necessarily my people. We don't have a lot of stuff in common. You know, they're all really nice and everything like that. But then I went to Manchester, and it was like, oh right. And then I was doing computer science and French, so I was spending, you know, and then Manchester is like got so many different universities and stuff. And you're surrounded by people who do arts, who do science and stuff. That's why I realized that Imperial wasn't right for me.
Amazing. I love that. And I think that's also really important, that you can make a choice and then decide that it wasn't the right thing, and you can course correct, can't you?
Though, I mean, I don't know whether we keep this in the box, but I say it was definitely easier for me then, because when I went to university was free. So I could start again, and I wouldn't have to pay anything else.
Yes.
Whereas I think nowadays I might have stuck it out because it's harder to change because of the whole financial hit that you have nowadays as students.
And I guess with that in mind, knowing how much it costs, I suppose, I wonder if you'd have approached it differently, whether you'd have been able to learn more about Imperial's culture before starting there and what it was like, and whether that might have changed your mind, or of going there potentially, knowing the burden of the debt that you'd be taking on.
Well, I think the thing is as well, back when I went to uni, we didn't have internet.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. And I mean, what I knew about Imperial was basically what I'd read in the newspapers and in their prospectuses. I didn't even visit it, you know, and stuff. And it was like, whereas now I would have researched, you know, watched videos, all this kind of stuff. I would know so much more about it. But then you were kind of taking, because I went to school in Scotland, all the English pupils, I think Imperial asked them to come for interviews, but because I was in Scotland, I didn't have to do an interview or anything like that. So it was kind of, So I think, but also, I also do think as well, if I knew now what I knew then, I might not necessarily even have gone to university straight after school. I might have gone later, because I feel like at that age, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, because I mean, even now, I don't really know what I want to do. I mean, I think I'm a really curious person. I'm always interested in lots of things. And I kind of feel like at that age, straight after school, I hadn't basically experienced the world enough to basically be like, okay, this is what I want to spend 3 years of my life or 4 years of my life doing. And I think if I'd done it like in my 20s or something like that, then I would have been a lot more like, yes. I can get a lot out of this. Because I feel like university for me, I feel like I probably didn't get that much out of it, because I don't think I ever really found the course that was right for me.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things, isn't it? You don't want to just be going through the motions. To be fair, it's why I didn't go to university, because I just couldn't decide that there was something. And then I always thought, well, I've got the option to go back, but I haven't needed to. I've managed to go on without, but who knows? I've still got a lot of my life left to do. And that's the thing, you can choose to study at any point.
On that point, I start my degree apprenticeship in like 2 weeks.
Wow. So, what are you doing?
So I'm doing a master's in technology and digital solutions with specialism in data analysis.
Wow.
So, but again, you can, at any time, you can go back. And I've got so many friends that have basically, you know, changed their careers, and basically one of them, she used to work for the civil servant, and then she basically retrained as a sort of speech therapist. You know, I've got a friend, she was a doctor, she's now retrained as a travel agent. Wow. You know, all of these things. So never too late.
Never too late.
And you don't need to decide your whole life. I mean, I don't think that the one job for life thing is really, it's going to be the minority rather than the majority.
Yeah, it's just trying to keep those doors open, isn't it? And making sure that you're just embracing everything and trying to be reflective of what you like about things and what you don't, and what does that help tell you about what to do next.
No, definitely.
I think that makes a difference. Just a quick note from me. We'd love you to hit the subscribe button. This helps us more than you might realise when it comes to growing this podcast, ensuring we can bring you the best guests possible. Thank you. Back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about you know, like not knowing what to do and dropping out of uni and stuff like that. So what advice would you have for people that are also in the same position?
That don't know what to do. They don't know if they're at uni whether they like it or not.
Or like, as to whether they like don't know what to do later in their life.
Oh, right, you don't know what to do. That's the thing. I suppose you might end up never really knowing, you know? I mean, yeah, it sounds a bit depressing. But the thing is, it's kind of, I suppose, the thing that you always need to think about, like, I always kind of bring it back to, like, what are your values? What is it that you really feel strongly about? And kind of like, what are your red lines? What is it that, oh, no way do I ever want to do that? And, you know, how strongly do you feel about that? And also, what is it that inspires you? What is it that excites you? You know, and then I also just think, you know, try things, because again, you know, you've got a long life ahead of you, and, you know, you could do something for a couple of years, see what you get out of it, and then try something else if it doesn't work, you know. So I'm always about the exploration, but think about, what is it that excites you? What is it that depresses you? What is it that people think that you're good at, but just drains you? Because that, to me, is the most dangerous stuff. The stuff that people go, oh, you're really good at it. And you think that you're good at it, but actually when you do it, you don't get any joy from it. You're just good at it. Don't get sucked into that, because, you know, that's kind of, because I always found that organizing, you know, people always like, oh, Petra, you're really good at organizing. Petra, you know, you'll do this, you'll run that. And I would always, I would work in a lot of teams where a lot of people weren't good at organizing. And so I ended up always being the organizer. But actually, I realized it drains me. You know, so I actually am doing something because nobody else is doing it, but I end up doing that a lot, but it's not filling me with any joy. And so there's things like that, you know, it's kind of really understand sort of what works for you and what doesn't.
That's such good advice, because just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
It's really good advice.
Yeah. Back to the BBC. So are there any like big examples of how they've used AI ethically? Or
I mean, there's things that, what have the BBC done stuff with? I mean, they use it for like iPlayer and sounds recommendations, you know, so, and then they use things like, you know, I don't know if you watch like Spring Watch or Winter Watch to like classify sort of birds and animals and things like that. I mean, just trying to think. There are so many ways that the BBC, a lot of them are way before my time, so I wouldn't even know about them. But like producing programs, like in production systems and things like that, AI is used there. And I'm trying to think lately with sort of generative AI. There's quite a lot of experimenting going on. I think they're working on a bite-size assistant, like to help with learning for young people. So that's currently sort of being developed, which is quite an interesting product. And I'm just trying to think what I can say.
Let's not walk you into anything you shouldn't do. That sounds really cool, though, because that's, again, where you can train it on a set of data that's based around the curriculum. And actually, some people learn so much better by being able to talk about it, even if that's typing about it, than sitting reading a book where they've got to go and find something. But if they can actively be curious and ask questions, which is a brilliant skill in itself, and get answers back that help them learn, that's fantastic. That would be a really great tool.
Yeah, I would say, I agree. And it comes back to that question you asked about as well previously about what excites me about AI and stuff like that. And I feel for me, that whole thing about personalization, like just a personal assistant for all aspects of your life, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, you know, education, whether it's sort of viewing or listening and all that kind of stuff. You know, sometimes you might go down too far that, so you basically end up in a filter bubble, but still it's kind of nice to sort of have something that you think knows you rather than just treats everyone the same.
That's so important, isn't it? Because I think also I can see AI helping a lot with neurodiversity and people that have different styles and ways of doing things. I think for so many years, we've been in a world, and we still are today from a curriculum point of view, where we're training that everyone's the same. You've got to do the same subjects. You've got to study in the same way. You've got to get graded in the same way. And actually, that's not how the world works. So the more we can have tools and technology that help us, that can know us and know what's good for us, that's just unlocking and going to unleash people's ability, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Exactly. Because I think what we've always sort of said is it's kind of, we kind of care about the process rather than the outcome. And actually, doesn't matter how people do something as long as they understand the same thing in the end, or they learn the same thing. Doesn't matter whether they've done exams or whether they've done coursework or they've done this or that, as long as they get to the same place.
Yeah, 100%.
What would you say is was the most enjoyable experience working at the BBC?
Let's think. I'd say the single thing that I always remember. So I love the proms. I think working the proms was great, and I still go back every summer to help out. But I think my favorite sort of thing at the proms was when they had a Quincy Jones proms, and I met Quincy Jones. That was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah. Because I love Quincy Jones, so that to me was I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me.
You're like, I've made it. This is it. This is it.
I got the photos, I got the signature. I was just like, yeah.
I love that.
So I think the thing about the BBC is sometimes at the BBC you kind of forget about the fact that you're kind of working surrounded by all this sort of stuff. Just going in, doing things like going to sit in on Radio 1 breakfast show, or Live Lounge and things like that, and just seeing those being made and things, like being part of all of that kind of stuff. And then and also I sort of work in the election coverage team, which is always great. So when the elections happen, and I remember the last one, it was basically when they're about to when they do the projection at, I think is at 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. or something, they do projection. So I was working in the building, and then at 9:58 running out and standing with all crowds of people looking at the BBC building and then watching the projection for, I think it was Labour majority. And it was just like, God, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Just sort of being part of that whole sort of thing.
Yeah, that must be incredible, getting to be part of that buzz, part of those moments. You probably have rubbed shoulders with many famous people, I imagine, walking down the corridors. And
you really don't notice it. I think that's the thing that I find really interesting. I never notice anyone, basically, and I would before I started in the BBC, but in the BBC, I just never notice.
It becomes normal.
Yeah, and stuff. So, and I'm also just oblivious, and then people go, oh. And I'll be like, why are there so many people around that person? And it's just like, well, and I'm just like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, but yeah.
Definitely a different change of mindset being involved in it. I love that.
Do you have any advice for people, say my age, would be interested in going a career into AI?
I guess it's, what do you mean by a career in AI? That's the thing, because I think the advice is AI is bigger. There's so much more to AI than meets the eye. There are tens and tens and tens of roles in AI that you've probably never heard about, that I've never heard about. And that's the thing. It's kind of, it's go for it, because basically that's kind of the future. But it's kind of but what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want out of it? Because it's AI is growing. It's what skills are you interested in getting? Why is it that you want to go in AI? And really think about that. But I think the thing about getting into AI as well, I would say it depends whether it's a technical role or a non-technical role. I think that's probably the main thing. If it's a technical role, get yourself some training. And if it's non-technical, kind of what is it that they want? What skill sets are they looking for? There are lots of transferable skills that everyone wants. Things like ability to problem solve, ability to work with others, a good communicator, to be able to convince people to basically share sort of technical information with non-technical audiences, ability to influence, to negotiate, those kind of things, networking, all of that. Those are all things that all employers are looking for, that are kind of transferable. And the thing about AI, the technical part of it, you can learn that. But, those sort of non-technical skills, those are the things that will really sort of stand you in good stead throughout your career.
Love that. If we could invite 17-year-old Petra here, what would your one bit of advice be, looking back on what you wish you'd known that you know now?
My advice would be, take your time, because I would basically yeah, I feel like I ended up doing quite a few things because I basically was like, I have to go to uni. If I'm changing, I have to find a new course. Okay, my first job out of uni, I have to get a job out of uni, and and it has to be in London. And so I feel like I kept on compromising on things that I thought at the time were fine, but actually in hindsight, I'm just like, well, I just rushed into that. I didn't really think about it. So I would basically be like, take your time and think. Is this really right for me? Don't be afraid of time pressures, and don't be afraid that it wouldn't work out, because it will work out. Just take your time.
Really good advice. Any final questions, Ruhan?
I think everything's been answered.
Yeah, I mean, that's been incredible. Like, such a dive into what you do, to what working at the BBC's like, and into AI, and some big questions that I don't think anyone fully has the answers to at the moment, because we don't really know what's coming, do we?
No.
But it's good that we've got people like yourself working in roles, looking at this and putting the responsible part at the forefront. I think that's the key thing, because, otherwise it will run away with us, and not the technology take over, but us humans let it run away with us. So, no, fantastic. Thank you so much, Petra. Thank you so much, Ruhan. This has been fantastic. We look forward to seeing you again on a future episode of Behind the Future. That concludes another brilliant episode of Behind the Future. Thank you so much for listening. You can listen back to other episodes on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, as that will help us to grow this podcast, ensuring we can get the best guests on here for you to learn from. You can also follow us on socials, linked in the show notes for exclusive content. See you on the next episode.